It's officially rally season, and we're getting ready to head out. Plus, we're going to talk a little bit about route management and a few things we do when we're getting ready to hit the road to make it a safer and easier travel. Welcome back to the RV Shenanigans Podcast, brought to you by Liquified. Like I said, welcome back to the RV Shenanigans Podcast, brought to you by Liquified. My name is Ryan, and along with my wife, Lauren, we are Millers in Motion. Before we dive into the show, I have a big request from you. This is the very last time that we're going to post a video podcast on the Millers in Motion channel. We'll still talk about it a little bit over here, but as far as the show, it's got its own thing now. So if you could do me a favor, please head over to the RV Shenanigans Podcast on YouTube. Click subscribe, do all of those things for me. And I'm going to ask a really big favor. Share the show with somebody. So our show is very much bigger on audio platforms like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, all of those platforms. We are exponentially larger on those podcasts as far as our analytics, and that's amazing because it's actually harder to grow a show on those platforms than it is on YouTube. So if you could do us a huge favor, and if you are listening to this, go in and rate and review the show. That's kind of like liking and commenting on YouTube, if that makes any sense. So by leaving a review and a rating, it helps them kind of know that we're being listened to, and it'll help push out to other podcast listeners that may not be able to find us. Also, a big help is if you could just share our show, just one person. We would greatly appreciate it. We try to bring the light and funny side of sometimes serious topics in the RV space, whether it's destinations, how-tos, or just kind of guides and those types of things. So we would be forever grateful if you could do that for us. Let's take a quick break, and then we're going to dive into our main topic today. What's the worst part about RVing? It's the black tank. No one likes to have to deal with a stinky or messy black tank. Let the team over at Liquified RV Black Tank Management help you out. Created from the team over at Matt's RV Reviews. This is a 100% biodegradable product made right here in the good old US of A. Liquified will help break down your black tank waste as well as help with those odors. In addition to helping with those odors, it's got an actually really great orange smell to it. So not only does it help break down those odors, it also helps freshen the bathroom. One of my favorite features is actually this easy measure pour spout. Because it's designed this way, you don't have to bring in other cups or measuring devices of any kind. Dump what you need in for your size tank, put the cap back on, and you're done. To learn more about Liquified RV Black Tank Treatment, you can visit liquifiedrv.com. Do us a favor, please support the brands that support us because they enable us to be able to bring you the podcast and the regular videos. To purchase Liquified Black Tank Treatment, please see the link down below. And we're back, and I am uncensored because Lauren's not here to whack me when I do something wrong. So, baby, I'm going to pre-apologize if I say or do anything. Well, I'm just going to apologize. Let's just go with that. So today we're going to talk a little bit about traveling and kind of how we go about our normal days. It's no secret. There's a lot of people that full-time, and we do full-time live in our rig, but we don't get to travel quite as much as we would sometimes like to. So as far as classifications of people that are out there, you have full-timers people that live in their rig, and I'm going to say for the most part they travel or they're stationary with taking a few trips. And then you have part-timers, weekend warriors, whatever you want to call it, people that own maybe a traditional sticks and bricks or home, apartment, condo, so forth. They don't live in their rig full-time, but then they take it out for trips. We love both things. We just love RVing. To be honest, we just love traveling. And so we don't look down on any version of that just because we're full-timers. Now, we do come back to North Texas quite a bit because of Lauren's job. She has a kind of hybrid job where she's remote a little bit, in person a little bit. And so we do come back to the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And when we do that, it is difficult sometimes to not think of yourself as stationary. Now, we still move the rig every 2 or 3 weeks, no matter what. Whether that's a quick trip or those types of things, but we do maintain a site. We do live in the rig full time. You can tell every podcast has been brought to you from right here. So with that being said, when we look at travel days, they're kind of different. right? So we've been sitting for a while travel day where we'll start getting ready the day or two before, because sometimes I have to clean things up, because when you're not moving as much, you have a tendency to just kind of toss things in places that might not make a lot of sense for a travel day. Now, that being said, when we are in a lot of travel days, so like let's say, for instance, when we were in Florida, as an example, for almost 2.5 months over the winter, between the Florida RV Super Show and all that, everything kind of stayed in its travel home, and we never really got anything that was too out of the realm of a normal day. And so we could be up and ready in about 30 to 45 minutes, as far as not hooked up, like sitting around drinking coffee, to packed, hooked up, and at least reasonably close to ready to roll. So that's kind of one of the things that, it depends on what you're doing. So I'm going to take it from right now that we've been sitting now for about 2 weeks. We ran up to, ironically, my last run was to Elkhart. No, it wasn't. No, I'm sorry. It was to the National RV Training Academy and Big Beer Battery headquarters and all that for the solar install. So I ran up to Elkhart for some service stuff at the factory. It was just, they could get us in easier with what we had going on, and spend a little bit more time with it. Plus we were working with them working with Alliance on a few things. I came back down. We were here for about a week and a half, 2 weeks. We went to the solar build, which was 2 weeks ago. We've been here since last Saturday, and now it's Friday, and we're getting ready to go. So a little under a week. So things are close, but they're not quite. Also, Lauren's working today, so we're just going to go a few hours down the road. But we always start with kind of where we're going, trip planning, those types of things. We use RV Life, but not for navigation. So I love their planning tool and their routing tool, the Trip Wizard. It is absolutely amazing. We actually, for the first time, are maintaining our entire year of travels in there. We have like tentative trips, and we have like research trips that we leave in there. Think of a trip as a file. So when we're bouncing around looking at things, we always kind of leave that as is. But then what we do is, once we dial in an actual route and our stops, we will put it into our Garmin RV 895 GPS, which is sitting right next to me, because I just got done doing today's route. So that's our main navigation tool. And then if push comes to shove, through Apple CarPlay, we can use RV Life as well. And that will allow us to have a backup system, because this is actually frozen once or twice. I think we had a bad update a while back because it froze about 2 weeks ago completely. Luckily, it was on our way back from the National RV Training Academy and the solar build. I know that route really well because I've been down there a bunch, so I didn't need a GPS for that route, but it's always nice to have it. So I called Garmin actually within a day, and I paid for expedited shipping because of the trip, but within a day they had me a replacement unit, and all I had to do is ship mine back. So that's kind of how we roll. Now, with that being said, when we are looking at routes, I don't pay much attention to like fuel stops. I'm kind of looking at the full route, where we want to land, and sometimes we'll pre-plan with flexibility, and then sometimes we'll kind of just wing it. It really just depends. Like if we're going somewhere that's only a day drive for us, which everybody has their rules, a day drive for me is anything under 9 hours. I know that sounds ridiculous to a lot of people. It's just what we do because we have to come back for Lauren's job. If we didn't do that, we wouldn't be able to go quite as far. And the Alliance National Rally is a perfect example. Lauren's working on a Friday. She had to go into the office for a little while today, and she'll be off by late afternoon, kind of that 4 to 6 o'clock range, somewhere in there. And I'm going to have the rig ready, hooked up, ready to roll. And so as soon as she gets here, we're going to park her truck and we're going to take off. We're not going to go very far. We're just going to get 2 to 4 hours down the road. I know for some people that's a full travel day. For us, that's barely breaking the surface. If we didn't do it that way, then we wouldn't be able to go quite as far. So if we left on Saturday, the chances of us getting to Elkhart on Sunday are much smaller, and it's definitely going to be later in the day. So there's an off chance we would just get to Elkhart, maybe go to the RV Hall of Fame or something, boondock for a night, one more night, and then from there, not worry about it too much. But it's one of those situations where if we can get on the road and knock a couple hours out, we feel like we can kind of sleep anywhere. The nice part is we can run our AC all night, especially now that we have the solar system. And if you're curious about solar, make sure and check out the last podcast or any of the videos in the same time frame, because the install video is coming out on Saturday. But there are a lot of different things that we do to kind of maintain. Now, I say that I can drive for a long period of time and be okay. Now, I drink a lot of coffee, and then Celsius are those little drinks. Those things have become amazing. But we'll get on the road and we'll head out. So, for instance, if we're going to be really flexible, like this trip up to Elkhart, like we have our destination. We know we want to be there on Sunday. Outside of that, I didn't really care so much. So we love Harvest Host and RV Overnight, but at the same time, too, you have to kind of think about those a little bit ahead of time. Now, sometimes if you're going to stop early in the day, you can get away with a day of reservation. But we have a tendency to drive right up until dinner, which sometimes is 7, 8, or 9 o'clock for us. Like tonight and tomorrow night, quite frankly, we'll probably be pulling in about that 8 o'clock hour to wherever we're going to stop, give or take a little bit. We're not even leaving until about 6 o'clock today. So we're just going to get up a little bit down the road. So with that being said, we have a tendency to like Cracker Barrel. We've done the Walmart thing once or twice and haven't been the biggest fan. And it could just be those Walmarts. It was a little sketch. We just didn't get a very good night's sleep. We were more stressed than we wanted to be. So we don't do a lot of Walmarts. We will in a pinch, but it's kind of a backup plan. For us, Cracker Barrels are nice enough to allow you to stay overnight. Now, I will say if you do stay overnight, regardless if it's a Harvest Host RV Overnight or like a Cracker Barrel or a Walmart, go spend some money at that business. That's why they do that, right? It's not that expensive. If you're going in a Cracker Barrel, grab some dinner, grab some breakfast the next morning before you head out, kind of depending on your schedule. But spend a little bit of money, make yourself known. Always ask for permission. Never just assume you can do it, because there's actually some city ordinances sometimes that don't allow overnight parking. Typically, there'll be a sign if that happens. But being able to just stop and kind of put the slides out and get a good night's sleep is a big deal. Now, that being said, when we do get to a position like that, we don't ever unhook. So we have a Levelmate Pro on board the rig, which I know what you're going to say. It sounds a little bit redundant when you're in a fifth wheel, because I have auto leveling. But what I do use it for, and what I've loved it for, is it gives me an idea where I'm sitting side to side, back to front as I'm driving around. So typically as I'm pulling into a Cracker Barrel, I'll pull it up and I'll leave it on a little magnet mount on my dash on my phone, and then I'll watch as I get positioned somewhere, and I kind of know where I can and can't be, because I'd always like my nose down just about an inch or two, because then that way when I lift up the front end with the manual leveling system, I can get some pressure off of my truck, and obviously as close side to side as I can possibly help it. Now, that being said, when we do find a spot we like, and sometimes it's not always perfect, but we will go ahead and use our levelers. Now, a couple of things with that. One, I want to give my truck a little bit of a break overnight. And so what I will do is I will bring the front up to a certain point, and then I will manually level left to right. Now, the one thing we will never, ever do is lift our tires off the ground. We've had to stop and reposition or get some adult Legos, like those stacking blocks, out and drive up on them so that we could actually level. But it's one of those things for me that if the hydraulic system were to fail for any reason and we were to drop, at least we're only dropping the play in the suspension. If the tires are off the ground, now your tires are hitting and you're going to get more of a bounce effect on your suspension. And we've got a very, very nice suspension in the Moride IS or independent suspension, but it is one of those things that you just don't want to risk it. And so I always leave our tires on the ground, and I've had to reposition because of that rule a couple of times, even when it's close. If I can spin that tire, it's not down. I want those extra points of contact on the ground. So when we do get there, we will pop those slides out. And now, depending on where we're at, will depend on how we pop our slides out. Sometimes in parking lots, when you're at a Cracker Barrel, so as an example, we're too long for their RV and bus parking. We did it once on our way to Florida. We were up near Pensacola. I don't remember where we were. Somewhere before we got down to Tampa one night, and the only where I could park was in the RV and bus parking, which is that longer angled parking. You'd think you fit. I don't. I had to use 2.5 sites diagonally, and that was barely fitting. So we are a little bit longer, so I will typically go along the edges in the regular sites as far away from the building as I can possibly be. Not for any other reason except for I don't want to take any parking spots away from people. Now, that being said, we don't like to come in before the dinner rush. We try to actually stay till after the dinner rush. So typically the earliest we'll ever get somewhere is like 6 or 7 o'clock if it's a Cracker Barrel, mainly because we want to give all the regular people that come to just get dinner an opportunity to kind of get in, get parked, and then kind of get out. And it's already and the crowds are thinning a little bit by the time we get there. Couple things. One, it allows us to be a little bit more maneuverable, I guess is the best way. There's less vehicles around. It's just easier. We're 64 feet, 63 feet, something like that when we're completely hooked up. It's a lot, and we're long. And so it does take a second to maneuver us and get us into a position where we can camp. Now, with that being said, we've run into a lot of people that have said, oh, we're too big, and they're 10 feet shorter than us or maybe 15 feet shorter than us. We have to be selective on our Cracker Barrels. We always will do a Google search and then switch over to satellite mode before we get anywhere for a couple of reasons. One, I like to see what I'm getting into before I do it from an aerial view. So I kind of have a few ideas, always pick like a few spots that I think will work. And then from there, when we get into it, it's kind of if we got to drive around in circles for a few minutes, that's what we do. If you're going to do something like that, the first time you go to park, play with it a little bit. Or if you just see an empty parking lot and you want to play with it, figure out how many spots you need to maneuver horizontally, and then how many spots you need to actually park. Like I know I need at least 12 to 14 spots to be able to back in the parallel park along a curb. And then I need, with no overhang, I need at least, I'm going to say 10. It's really like 8 or 9, but I need a little bit so that I can swing out, if that makes sense. Also, when you're parking in those types of situations, understand that somebody could come and park right in front of your truck. So I always leave the rig and the vehicle in a position where if I had to get out because of people parking, I typically will. And so I always try to take up just enough of one spot in front of me and angle the truck so that if I needed to pop out, I could without having to back up in case someone were to get too close to us on the rear as we're sleeping overnight. You never know what could happen. Also, a little tip, I avoid the dumpsters if I can. Not always an option, but if I can, I try to avoid them because typically at somewhere around 2 to 4 in the morning is when the dumpster shows up. It's not every night, but Murphy's Law, if you're there, it's probably coming. So we do actively try to avoid that. Now, as far as every other place, Harvest Host, those types of things, they're always going to have recommended arrival hours. So just do what they ask and don't come in too late after the fact and those types of things. Another thing is, do we put our slides out? I'm going to say situationally. So for us to access our fridge and some of our coach, we do have to put one slide out, especially if we're going to go inside and sit down and have dinner or breakfast. We need to put a slide out so that the dogs can have enough room inside of our RV that they can function a little bit, at least kind of get around, lay down, that kind of a thing. So if we find the right spot and we feel okay, we'll actually put our stairs facing out. So we'll hug the curb as much as we possibly can. If we do that for our coach, which we're in Alliance Valor 44 V14, that allows us to put our main slide out, which has our fridge on it, which is on our stair side, or our camp side. So we get really, really close to the curb when we do that because we're going to be facing out. I typically have some pop-up cones that I'll throw around too, just to kind of warn people. But if any portion of me gets within really a couple of feet of the end of that parking spot, I won't put that slide out. If that's the case, I'll actually turn around the other way because that slide we really have to go out. Now, the other side is actually the slide I'm sitting in, so it's our off-camp side, which our main couch is on, as well as our bedroom slides on that side. So we don't have to put our bed out, but I'll be honest, it makes life so much easier. So typically what we'll do is we will try to, essentially when we come in, I'll put the driver's side on the curb side. And so that way I can hug over as much as I possibly can. If we can do that, we can normally put out all 3 slides. If it's a little bit of a tighter, or if we're at a rest stop for any reason, that's never going to happen. So we always hug the off-camp side, and we only put the one slide out, just so we can get in and out, use the fridge, which we can access half of our fridge when the slide's in, but not the other half. And to be honest, it's just a little tighter getting through, and so it's great if we could put at least one slide out, and then we can sleep with the bed in. In fact, Alliance has a really cool thing called What You Know Wednesday, so whether you're an Alliance owner or not, it's just helpful tips. Now, if you don't have an Alliance, some of them might be a little off because you might have different technology, different systems, so on and so forth. I didn't realize where the rollers actually were for the bedside, and so I thought they were at the end. They're not. They're actually about the third of the way in, and so if you're going to sleep with the slide in, you don't want to just crawl on the very back of it because now you're putting a bunch of, if this is the wall side near my elbow and and if you're listening to this, sorry, and my fingertips are the end. I thought the rollers were down here by my fingertips, but they're not. They're more like right here by my wrist. So if you get on the end, you're putting a lot of pressure on the rig like that, or the slide like that. So for us, we just make sure and get it on the side, which is why that double door in the bathroom is kind of handy for us. And that allows us to kind of be able to get in and get out. Also, because we have a bigger bed, it barely touches the end, and we kind of get this bump up. And I just never sleep as well because my feet hang off the end of the bed a little bit. And so I hit our little dresser thing right there constantly throughout the night. So if we can push the slide out, I can normally get at least a normal night's sleep. But yeah, that's personal preference at that time. And then obviously, if you're in a motorhome, whole different game. You can kind of abide by the same rules of thumb, but for the most part, that's you know your rig better than anybody else. So you have to pick your side. Just know that when you're coming in, whether it's a harvest host or anything else, do a little scouting mission first. And I say that, and it's Google Maps or Apple Maps in satellite mode. That way I know where I'm coming in. If there's multiple entrances, I know what, based on where I want to park, I know which entrance to come in. I know which way I need to turn. I might come into an entrance and there's a spot right there that I want to be at, but it's reversed if I were to make a quick turn. And so I may have to go around the building once in order to angle myself correctly to get into that spot. So just do a little scouting. Other than that, when we are on the road, we'll pick our night stays. If we're going to wing it a little bit more, like this trip is a great example again. I actually picked 2 different Cracker Barrels within about 2 hours of each other that I know I'm going to have to remind myself because I looked at a lot of them, but I know those 2 would work. Sometimes you get to Cracker Barrels or other places, and for bigger rigs, it might not work because the parking lot's not very big. There's a couple here in Fort Worth that are not designed with RVs in mind, and so there's no way I would stay at one of those. We typically try to pick them either right before we get in the town or right after we get in the town. Just a little advice. The ones in town are always a little bit tighter. Plus, normally if you get into cities, that's when ordinances are going to kick in and you can't really stay overnight anyway. So typically the ones in the country care a little less. They have a little more maneuverable room just because A, they're less busy, and B, the parking lots are just bigger. So, but double checking where you can and can't go is awesome. Now, with that being said, moving from kind of fueling and all of that stuff, to be completely honest with you, just wing that because I never really know. You can be going up hills and my gas mileage is going to tank. You can be going down hills and my gas mileage is going to be a little better. So we always start off a trip full of fuel, full of def. So as an instance today, we're going to leave as soon as Lauren gets home. When I'm done recording this podcast, I got to go run a few errands, get a few things at the store, and I'm actually going to stop and get fuel and def and top off. We're very lucky that we live close to a bunch of Buc-ee's, and they have def on the handle. Once we get moving, we'll only use our Open Roads fuel card, and in doing that, we'll be able to get def on the pump. So typically in a trip, like we're going about 1,100 miles in about a day and a half up to Elkhart, Indiana, technically Goshen, where the 4-H grounds are, where the Elkhart County 4-H grounds are, where the rally is. We will probably get def either just as we get there, our last big fuel stop, or we'll do it the first stop on the way out, and then typically I'll do it on my way in as well, just because it's always nice. I've yet to have to buy the box of def and put it in there. Now, we have some trip plans coming up where I'm going to buy some and take it with me, but it's more of a backup. And then I'm more than likely going to have to use it because truck stops become less of a thing on that type of an itinerary, which I know I'm being very vague. That's intentional. But on something like this, and when I get down to about a half of my def, I go ahead and top it off because I'd never want to run into that problem where all of a sudden you can't throttle past 55 or 40 because your def is low. I just don't want to mess with that. So as soon as I hit the halfway mark or a little below, that's when I'm going to go ahead and put def in from a pump that's there. So later today, I'll go ahead and top off on diesel when I'm done with my run around and get some def, and then we'll be pretty much ready to go. A few other things we'll do in preparation, like last night as a good example. Sometimes I don't know where all of Lauren's stuff goes on the inside, and so I just asked her before she went to bed last night or before she left this morning, just anything that I'm not accustomed to that's hers. If she could go ahead and stow that for travel. Everything else is 100% good to go. It's just a matter of putting out the normal stuff. Now, I will tell you, this is where checklists come involved because I'm very used to just doing the outside stuff and the toy hauler space. The reason why I do the toy hauler space is because we're strapping things down. And in addition to that, it's my office, and so I kind of know how stuff travels there. I will typically do my office the day before because there's not a big reason why I need to mess with that. And depending on what time we're leaving, if we're not leaving till the afternoon, I don't care. Like, it's up right now. I'm going to edit this podcast before I leave. But if we were leaving first thing this morning, no, it'd be done. It'd be everything in the office, everything in the garage would be in travel position, strapped down, and ready to go. Now, the bikes are another one of those things. We actually do strap them down, but they're in bins because we have the electric XP 3.0s, and so they fold in half. So those are a little bit different in the sense that we sometimes bring them in. Excuse me. We sometimes bring them in. We sometimes don't, depending on when we're leaving. So like when the rally's over, we actually have to get going pretty quickly the morning after the departure day. And so we'll probably go ahead and have our bikes packed up, the toy hauler space packed up in preparation for leaving that day because, well, we have a surprise. And if you watch the main videos, you'll see it very, very soon. We'll probably do a podcast over some version of it. Because we are a travel channel first and foremost, we have some fun new stuff that we're going to explore and do a little bit. We're very excited to bring it to you. And from a podcast perspective, this lives in the RV lane 100% of the time. So we'll probably do some comparison stuff to what we're going to be talking about. But let's just say we have to haul. So we have to get on the road pretty quickly. We need to make all the way from Elkhart, Indiana to about Joplin, Missouri, which is about 10 hours. And so I would love to get there with some time to rest. So yeah, that's kind of how we go about our planning. Now, I will tell you, we're very lucky that we have the MORryde independent suspension, that we could afford to do that on our new Valor. And that makes putting stuff away a little bit of an easier task. Sometimes, like in our previous coach, it took us almost 30 minutes just to put tension rods up, strap things down, all of that. We don't have to work quite as hard. You still got to put stuff away, right? But you can kind of get away with sticking stuff to counters, like, as a good example, our air fryer. And our spatulas and all that stuff are in a jar that's stuck with museum putty down, or Gorilla. So there's the Gorilla adhesive people, like Gorilla Glue. They make a putty that kind of sticks. Also, some of the things on our mantle that we can stick down, they're all stuck down. So we don't actually take anything down in that scenario. We do have like a little air freshener thing that's sitting there. Because we have to refill it, we can't stick that down. So that'll just go in the sink, and we haul. So, we don't have to do a ton. Everything we've done with this Valor has been to make travel days easier and just cleaner overall for us, so that it's not as much work. So with all of that, if you do have questions, please feel free to ask, whether it's an email, which you can email us whenever you'd like at info@millersinmotion. If you're listening to this, words, Ryan, on our Buzzsprout account, which is essentially through our website, you can actually send us a text message directly. And if you do that, just know we can't see your name unless you put it. So put your name in there if you send us that message. If you send us a message, we will gladly read it if it's a question or anything along those lines on the show. Hoy, I feel like I've been talking at you guys for a while, and it's really only been about 30 minutes. So this is going to be a little bit on the shorter side for us, at least on the podcast. This was harder for me because I don't have a Lauren, and so hopefully you're okay with it. If you have questions, like I said, if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure and leave them down in the comments. We will be happy to answer them. Also, if you are watching this on YouTube, remember I said this at the beginning of the show, I'm going to say it again. Remember, this is the absolute last time we're going to post the RV Shenanigans Podcast video series on Millers in Motion. So if you watch this, please go right over there to the RV Shenanigans Podcast on YouTube. It's its own channel. There is a link in the description down below. In addition to that, if you're listening to this on Spotify, Apple Podcast, all those, please rate and review. Again, I cannot describe to you how much that helps us with the algorithm, which is not really a thing on the podcast side. I mean, it is, but it isn't, if that makes sense. But doing that really does help us. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you to our sponsors for sponsoring us and allowing us to do this crazy, crazy thing I call a job, which is really just talking, which I love. And we will catch you guys next time from the 2024 Alliance National Rally. Have a great week.
What's the worst part about RVing?
That's our ad. Have a great week.